So here we are. Finally, at long last, Mortal Kombat 11 Scorpion from McFarlane Toys. I already did a review of the Sub-Zero. Check that out right here if you'd like. And this is the second figure in the line. As you can see, you got a little bit of artwork on the side of the box there. The figure, you got the figure looking pretty cool there. If I can get rid of the glare. There we go. Nice work. And the figure in a pose on the back. How's this going to hold up compared to Sub-Zero, compared to other similar Mortal Kombat figures? Let's find out. I'm about to open this for the first time, so I'll give you my thoughts in just a moment. So here we go, out of the package. I've gotten the chance to mess with him a little bit, and we'll go over his articulation first. But before I do that, I do want to say that just like Sub-Zero, when you remove the figure from the package, this whole tray thing comes out, and you're going to be able to have a stand that's on the bottom there, right there. So if you do want to put your figure on a stand, you're going to have to rip this thing off of the back of the package here. So that's up to you if you want to use it. I usually don't use the stands, but because I keep the boxes, I'll just have the option. So right away, you'll notice McFarlane once again did a great job with the paint detail, the sculpting, all of that. I don't think I ever had many McFarlane toys where I wasn't impressed by the sculpt. That's kind of been their thing over all the years. And the paintwork certainly impresses as well. That said, McFarlane and Articulation have never really gone hand in hand. The Fortnite figures were a good example of what they could do, and Sub-Zero impressed me. So let's see what Scorpion has to offer. For starters, looks like you got some pretty good detail on the mask. The eyes, I've seen like prototype images where they're painted like really like strangely, like it doesn't look good. My figure seems fine, honestly. I don't really have an issue with the way these eyes are painted, so that's a plus. Unlike Sub-Zero, you get a really decent side-to-side motion. He will be able to turn his head. Sub-Zero had like kind of that one-piece neck that made it like basically so the head popped off if you tried to turn it. Unfortunately, unlike Sub-Zero, you can't really get much up and down out of him. Yeah. The hood piece kind of gets in the way of the articulation there. I will say, though, the face on the inside is separate, so if you did want to get him to look upwards, you would be able to. It just might be a little awkward looking, but, you know, if you wanted him lunging forward, you would be able to do that. It just wouldn't move the entire hood. It would just be the inside piece. So you do have that option. Shoulders and everything, the armor, paint, everything looks pretty nice. I got a little bit of a smudge in there, but it doesn't really bother me all that much. Shoulders, you'll be able to get them pretty far up, honestly. Actually, just about 180 degrees at the shoulders, which is good. These armor pieces do hinder that a little bit, but I mean, if you want to get him up over his head, you'll be able to do that, and the armor pieces won't bother you there too much. Does have that ball joint in the shoulder, which is nice. There is a butterfly joint, you'll see. Will you see it? I think you can see it better on the other side. You can see it on the inside there, but it doesn't give you much functionality, which not the biggest deal in the world, but you know, it is there. You might get an extra little bit of a couple degrees of motion out of it. His double jointed elbow, just like Sub-Zero's, is really nice. He's also got obviously the bicep swivel up there. The wrist, just like Sub-Zero, once again, you might be hearing me say that a lot. He's got the hinge on the ball right here, so he can hinge like that. And you can also twist the hand so that you can get his hand to go in like an up and down motion. And if you did want to twist it back to have his hand do the in and out motion, you also have that option. So good mobility in the hands. Not a ton in the, like, I don't know if you would even call that an ab crunch. It just looks like a separation of how they molded it. But the waist here does have a pretty decent diaphragm joint. It's nothing crazy, but you will be able to get a little bit of mobility out of it, and you can see kind of on the inside there, looks like it's a ball joint too, so you will get some side to side out of it, which I do like. Now the legs, I was actually kind of concerned about this because he's got these skirt pieces and like armor pad things hanging over, but honestly, you're gonna be okay. You can basically get his legs all the way out to do a split, which I wasn't expecting, so that's definitely really cool. I'm glad to see that that happened. Reason why that happened, I think, is because these armor pieces aren't one solid piece of sculpt work, I guess. It's all just, these two are separate from the front and the back, which means that these two, it's not on a hinge necessarily, but it is separated, so you will be able to get those legs out to the side like that, which is definitely cool. I wouldn't leave it like that for extended periods of time because you might stress the plastic, but you know, if you're just posing it up for a little while, if you want to mess with it, you have that option. He will also get a pretty good front to back split as well, which I honestly can't remember if Sub-Zero had, so that's good to see. You'll get a twist in the upper thigh because of the way the leg joint is engineered. I should also point out that he has kind of the same weird square crotch and ass joint that Sub-Zero has. It's ugly, but you don't see it because he's got his tunic and everything over it, so no big deal. Just above the knee, you do have a twist, but it doesn't twist a ton because of the way you'll see here that his gear is molded. So it's kind of a little restrictive, but if you combine it with the upper thigh joint there, you will be able to get good poses out of it. Here is the double jointed knee, which works exceptionally well, I must say. Really good stuff. The armor plating on the leg, on the shin, looks good. Lastly, you will get that ankle joint up and down, really nicely done. Yeah, you get a little bit of a pivot in there too. And as I mentioned, same with the wrist and same with Sub-Zero. If you twist the part of the joint that's inside the leg and then twist the foot back on it, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but if you can do it, you will wind up getting even more of a ridiculous ankle pivot like that, or ankle rocker, I guess I should say. So whatever pose you want to put this guy in, he will be able to stand both feet flat on the floor. And lastly, he does have that toe joint too. So overall, pretty poseable, not unlike his boy Sub-Zero there. So definitely good stuff. You'll see here, he does come with his chain as well, his Get Over Here spear, which is sculpted really nicely. It's different from the more traditional, just kunai looking spear that the Storm Collectibles figures have. Also, you'll notice the difference between this and those versions is this is on a chain compared to like the more rope cable style that he had in those earlier games. So really cool to see, and this looks like it just wraps around his wrist, so if you want to put that on, it's easy. Also of note, he comes with these two swords, one much longer than the other, obviously. Would have been nice to see a little bit of paint shading on the handles, but I'm not mad at it. They do also come with a couple of sheaths, so you could put them in. Looks like they'll fit in just fine. There's the long one. I say they'll fit just fine, and I'm having a hard time with it. Maybe it won't, I don't know. Okay, so the short one fits fine. The long one, you might have to try and persuade it, but it should, you know, if you mess with it, it'll probably go all the way in. Maybe I just won't, because now I can't get it back out. I'm not going to break it, I promise. So there he is with the sheaths put onto the figure itself. There are little pegs on each of these that just plug into the, I guess we would call it the belt or the side armor piece. They do look pretty good when they're on there. I would have thought they might have hung like a little more like that, but it only does that if you take it off, apparently. But yeah, they're pretty much straight front to back, and they're still functional, so you will be able to just remove the sword, or at least the one sword that I'm able to get out of the sheath, and, you know, pop it back in there. Looks pretty good. So here we are taking the camera kind of freeform, and you can see, pretty poseable. He does get into some decent poses. You'll be able to get him nice and kind of deep for a low center of gravity martial arts style pose. Got him with a sword at the ready over here. Still didn't get that one out. I don't know if that's coming out, but what are you gonna do? It's never an easy thing reviewing an action figure. Just ask some of these guys I see complaining about it lately. Oh, low blow. So height-wise here, you can see him compared with the Storm Collectibles versions of Scorpion on the left and on the right. This is the MK1/2 version that came out some years ago, and this is the MK Ultimate 3 or Trilogy version, depending on what you call it, that came out just within the past couple of months. One of the things that people were saying about this version is that he's significantly taller than this one, and I can say that that's true. He's like bulkier and a little bit bigger. Which makes him stand a little more even with the McFarlane one that we're talking about here today. McFarlane does stand a little taller than the original Storm Collectibles, but he's about even with the newer version. So, I mean, I think the McFarlane's actually slightly taller, but you could always write that off as being like the hood on top of his head adds a little bit of height or whatever. Do whatever you want. It's your toy. I don't care. And here he is next to the McFarlane Toys Sub-Zero that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. And you can see the two of them are roughly the same height, which that works for me. Sub-Zero's skin tone is slightly darker than Scorpion's, and there are a lot of differences obviously on the costumes because in MK11 they're not just palette swaps of one another anymore. They actually do have very distinct uniforms. So I do like that they went the extra mile. They gave you a lot more bang for your buck in terms of like variety. So that's definitely cool. If you do have the Sub-Zero already, the Scorpion will look good with him. Or if you just have some of the Storm Collectibles figures, the Scorpion I think should fit right in with those too. So overall, once again, McFarlane has really impressed me. For the price, you're going to pay about 25 bucks for this figure. I think he's worth it, especially if you got the Sub-Zero to pair with him. They're going to look really great together. And like I mentioned, he does scale up reasonably well with some of the other Storm Collectibles Mortal Kombat figures. Once again, comparing him with the Storm Collectibles figure, I still prefer the Storm Collectibles. And, you know, this is going to draw the ire of people maybe in the comments, but, you know, you're allowed to have a different opinion than me. It's what it boils down to. That said, the McFarlane figure is certainly not without its merits. It's really nice. The posability you're going to get out of it is really good, and you can't beat the price. So I would say pick it up. Well worth it. That said, my name is Captain McKay, and hopefully I'll be able to see you in a future video here pretty soon. All right, later on.
That's crispy.